everybody. It is so nice to see familiar faces and new faces here. We are all here because we understand the important role that news plays in keeping our leaders accountable, keeping community members informed, and that all of that together enables the kind of civic participation that keeps our democracy thriving. Our local media in Chicago amplifies diverse voices. We should be proud of our Chicago ecosystem. If you don't know, it's really across the country. In times of crisis, such as those that we're living in today, dare I say, robust local news delivers timely, accurate, and potentially life-saving information. But as we all know, the business of offering high-quality news is facing multiple challenges today. Press Forward is our collective response to these challenges. The working with highly engaged funders, experts, community advisors, and news organization leaders themselves to strengthen local journalism and support sustainable operating trends. So help them figure out the path forward. I'm really proud that Chicago is leading the charge nationally. Not only were we already leaders because of the robust local news organizations that we have, but really our donors, our philanthropic sector is leading the charge when it comes to figuring out how philanthropic resources can be catalytic and additive to the ways in which news organizations must operate today. Since May 2024, Press Forward Chicago has dispersed more than $3 million of grants to local news organizations, more than 24 news organizations to support capacity building, the kinds of things that often aren't that sexy to talk about, but are so critically important to the vitality of an institution and organization. Their focus has been on growing audiences, on engaging communities, all of these things in order to ensure long-term sustainability. Press Forward Chicago also recently launched a first-of-its-kind initiative to support immigration stories in Chicago, with Chicago Public Media hosting a hub for such reporting for our local news system. That is increasing a number, and I would say the quality of the original stories, which is so critical right now, coming out of various parts of the city. And we're amplifying those news articles through additional reporting and through social media and through other ways to reach more folks. We've started to develop a similar playbook based on this for education reporting. Again, a really critical time for education reporting as we gear up to get a fully elected local school board in place. And, it's another area where we've seen steep decline in the number of local reporters that are dedicated to the education. Over the next 3 years, the Press Forward team plans to add 10 reporters across our region, creating special beats that focus on federal policy, on, local elections, et cetera. And the idea, again, is to grow audiences and reach people who understand that the state of affairs with our local education system is really all of our business. And the more we have access to facts, to transparent reporting about what's going on, the more we can get engaged. Other issues on the agenda are health, justice, the environment, and housing. So we're going to try to replicate this model for all kinds of really important issues. And, this is obviously about more than putting more than just more reporters on the street. It's about supporting leaders to really evolve the business operations that makes it more relevant for today, for the future. As I said, we really believe philanthropy can serve as a catalyst for change and evolution, particularly in this critical moment. And the efforts like Press Forward are meant to support innovations, not just on the business side, but also in the storytelling, in technology, and all kinds of other things that are important for news organizations to have the resources to explore in this moment. We also are really proud of being able to strengthen local journalism just through networking. events like these, other events that bring together people who are working in journalism and adjacent to journalism to learn from one another, to build relationships and to build trust. So now, please join me in welcoming this panel that's going to give us a little bit of insight into how that's all working in Chicago today. To introduce the panel and to moderate is my colleague and happy to say friend, local media legend who needs no introduction, Tracy Bain. Thank you.
As I get to say for the first time in 39 years, thanks, boss. I got a boss and she's great. So first we're going to start with introductions, and then I got a bunch of questions that nobody in the world really has full answers to, but we're going to do our best to talk about some solutions as well as the role of media. So I'm starting here. Melody, if you go first, and we'll go down the line just to give a little background and what your part of the media landscape is.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I am honored to be here and honored to see all of you here. I don't want to look too closely at the room because I feel like I know everybody in here, Andrew. What's really weird about Chicago, it's a big city, but it's a very small town. And it gets even smaller for me because at Loyola University, I graduated from Loyola University. And I always say that this is the school, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, I'm a lifer to Chicago. This is the school that allowed me to go outside of my zip code, to move outside of my zip code. My parents came from the South. My father was a legendary disc jockey in Chicago who went on to own a company that we now work for, that I work for. Well, that I own, I guess. Well,
Or I don't
but,
do.
that right there. But what's interesting is when I was here back when the earth was cooling in the 80s, I used to leave here and go to work. They didn't have campus down here, so I was on the Lakeshore campus, but all my classes were here. And so this place holds a very dear space for me because it made me. I see Jenny sitting here who runs the School of Communications. This place made me. I love Loyola. And so for young people, two things I want to talk about real quick, then I'm going to tell you. A root-based school is important for you to know in the School of Communications. And Loyola is here. It is so Chicago. You got some young people, we'll take them. I'm a trustee, you probably can tell. Okay, now, so been at the same company since I was 15 years old from Chicago because my father owned it. And I was in them streets in Chicago on the south side, right? And my father wanted to distract me. And so he gave me a radio show when I was 15 years old. And so it just distracted me on Saturday nights when you could really get into some mayhem in Chicago. I have worked in every department at this radio station, guys, every one of them. I've mowed grass. I have worked on the tower. I have done everything before I became the chair and CEO. As a result of me becoming, I'll leave a lot of it out, but as a result of me becoming chair and CEO, I want to think he gave me a tremendous platform, but I have grown it. We have a Spanish station now, WRLL, which has got a similar footprint to our flagship station here in Chicago, WVON, which went on the air in 1963 as the voice of the Negro. That's when call letters in Chicago meant something. WGN, world greatest newspaper. WLS, world largest store. These call letters meant something at some point, and they did at our station. So I'm very proud to still have this dynamic voice of the Black community on the air. And we have a digital streaming platform, Von TV. And what I think keeps us relevant, keeps us important, is our connection to community. I don't run from that. I'm not trying to be CBS. I have a friend who says, I don't want to be green and global, I just want to be black and local, right? And so we have that connection to community, doing a great job with WRLL, but the digital piece, and we all know this, is what will help our company continue. And to be able to meld the traditional with what's going on now, I think you'll see that resonating, I hope, throughout this conversation. At least I will be talking about it. But it is so important. One does not have to take away from the other. As a matter of fact, they work very effectively together. So again, thank you for coming.
I'm not sure how I'm going to follow that, Stephanie Lule. I am co-founder and executive editor of Black Club Chicago. I did not attend Loyola, but I did want to shout out Lily Malone, our former Black Club intern in the front row, Loyola student. We're super proud of everything that she's doing right now. And we also do work with Loyola. We republish a lot of their student work, super quality work. And so thank you for all the great students Loyola is sending us. I am a reporter. I still consider myself like very much a reporter at heart. I started my career at the Aurora Beacon News, and then I moved on to work as a reporter and editor at the now defunct DNA Info. If you guys aren't familiar with that story, I worked there for about 4 or 5 years. It was a hyper-local news site doing really quality on the ground, boots on the ground journalism that neighbors really came to love. And in 2017, the billionaire who owned it, Joe Ricketts, decided that he was no longer going to support this kind of journalism and laid 115 journalists off overnight. I was one of those people. We all thought, what are we going to do? One of the things that we heard right away from neighbors was, oh man, I so rely on this journalism, like you have to try to bring this back together. And another thing that they would tell us as we would hear from neighbors is, why didn't you just ask us to support you? It was an ad-based model, it was a completely free site. And people said, why didn't you ever ask us to subscribe or donate? So we took a leap of faith and we relaunched, launched a brand new newsroom as a nonprofit, reader-supported news site called Black Club Chicago, and I can't believe it, but now that's 7 years ago.
Wow.
We launched with just 8 of us, 5 reporters, 3 editors, 3 co-founding editors, very small and super scrappy, and 7 years later we now have 40 full-time journalists and staff across the city, and we are a sustainable, $5 million a year business. And one of the things that we really believe in is, we believe when you put reporters on the ground in neighborhoods, it leads to trust with neighbors over time. When we put them in all neighborhoods and spread them out, so for instance, one of the things that we've really invested in is putting reporters on the ground in South and West Side neighborhoods that have long been uncovered or horribly covered in our city. So for instance, pretty soon we'll have 5 full-time South Side reporters that are dedicated to clusters of neighborhoods on the ground. And we believe that when you do that, you not only build trust with neighbors and they're more likely to support you, we also believe that it's going to lead to more accurate portrayals of those neighborhoods over time. So instead of just reading about the crime and mayhem happening in their neighborhoods, they're going to hear about the coffee shops opening up and all the good things that their neighbors are doing and all the things that really make a community. So that's the big bet that we've made. And so far it's really paid off. And not only are we, I mentioned that we're reader supported, we are also supported by a mix of ads and grants, thanks to people like Tracy and the Chicago Community Trust as well. So super excited to be here to talk about the future with y'all.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Brad Edwards, and I'm thrilled to be on this panel with everybody. And used to be at WBBM, that was world's best battery maker. Believe that or not. And sometimes I still think I'm there. I was just at CVS picking up like a stage 5 narcotic because I threw my back out moving a house plant, which says how exciting my life is. And she says, how's it going at Channel 2? And I said, it's going great. And that really couldn't be further from the truth. I think we know where media is and where we are in this world where we are trying to figure out what truth even is anymore. And as an investigative reporter, you know, I always thought things weren't black and white. It was just my job to pinpoint where things stood on the gray scale. And there's delicacy and there's nuance to that. And in this day and age, what we're talking about here is more needed than ever. I am now a part of the graveyard of former main anchors at Channel 2, but it's a very proud graveyard. Lester Holt, Bill Curtis, you name it, they're former main anchors. So I was very proud. I'm very proud to be the first openly gay main anchor in Chicago. Very proud of some really thoughtful work, and won some awards, and now I'm proud of what I'm doing now, and that's in the communications realm. I say sometimes to people that I teach young people how to talk because they don't know how to talk because they're playing with their iPads all day, and then I teach older people tech because we have a lot of brilliant minds out there and their voices should be heard, and they are thought leaders, getting them engaged in LinkedIn and social media management, and I kind of do it all as a communications professional, but I'm excited to be here and talk about journalism. That's my first love.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I am Tracy Brown. I'm the Chief Partnership Officer at Chicago Public Media. Sounds like I'm the newbie to Chicago, so to speak. I've been here 7 years. I spent much of my career, I moved here from Atlanta. I'm a Georgia native. So I've worked in Dallas, in Atlanta, Tampa, St. Pete, as well as Columbia, South Carolina, and moved here, got enticed to move to Chicago in the winter of 2019, the day before the polar vortex. But I have stayed. I came here to run the newsroom at WBEZ, and then a year into that was the pandemic. And then came through the pandemic of running a radio newsroom remote. And then a year later, I thought that I was fully into the audio world, and then I became a part of a small team that actually raised the money to basically acquire the Chicago Sun-Times. And so I was very familiar with that, considering I had been decades in newspapers. And so I became the Chief Content Officer for Chicago Public Media, basically overseeing the newsroom at WBEZ, the Sun-Times, and a music station that we call Vocalo, that actually has a history of several years of interns from Loyola, actually, to this day, still intern at Vocalo. And then, so I was leading the newsroom at Chicago Public Media, and then we were just getting ready to transition to do our newsroom. I was running a project that we called the Newsroom of the Future, which was really of us bringing together those two newsrooms. And then a lot began to happen in this country, particularly in regard to public media and funding and sustainability. And I had done work already in helping to fundraise for the station, and I really was ready to do more, support journalism in a new and a different way. And so my new role as Chief Partnership Officer, I do oversee advertising and sponsorship, which is very interesting when you think about church and state rules, but I know journalism and I know how to tell that story, and so it's paid off for us. In addition, I work closely with development as well, but one of the great things that I get to do is to partner all around this city and even this country and looking for opportunities for us to create sustainability, not just for Chicago Public Media, but for other organizations in this region. And so it's been an exciting thing, and it is an opportunity for us to really look at how we chart our future. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. Yeah.
So we talked, Brad alluded a little bit to the national crisis facing CBS and other national media, and Stephanie alluded to that local on the ground trust. So let's dig a little deeper on the role that local and community media play in that public trust for information? We'll start at that end this time. The role that local community news helps in restoring trust.
Right. So I think we play a really important role. I mean, I think when you look at the most of the issues and the erosion of trust in media, I think it happens at the national level. And I think that particularly when people say, well, media does this and media does that, they are looking at some of the larger news organizations. I think locally, people get what we do and how important it is for your community. That the people who are covering City Hall, the people who are covering the school boards, and we have some of the highest trust scores in Chicago public media, and I think part of that is because it's local. People know how important local journalism is to them, and it's connected. And so I think that our role is to continue to do that work on the ground, to hold the government to account. And so, and it's not even about partisanship. And I think that the polarization, politics and a lot of other things have diminished credibility just in general for news organizations. But I can tell you, whether it is, Governor Pritzker or Democrats, they don't feel like we are covering them in a way that is, we're just as hard on, Mayor Johnson and Governor Pritzker as we are any others. And so I think that locally that you don't have that polarization.
Yeah, Lori Lightfoot disdained me. I did a 40-part series on, of all things, water bills called Getting Hosed. We saved Chicagoans nearly $500,000. And yeah, I did get away with that name. I got away with that name. Because I said, they said, what should we name it? I said, Getting Hosed. And they all looked at me. I said, get your heads out of the gutter. We're talking about water bills. I do need to give my Loyola shout out, though. I did do the only time a reporter has ever done a story with Sister Jean picking her Final Four bracket. I did that story. And it was one of my finals stories at CBS, too, and probably one of my proudest ones. But I'm up here with true luminaries in what I think is the game changer in news, and that is hyper-local. I think proximity breeds accountability. I believe when you have a proximity and you are in the community, people just inherently believe it more. And I believe hyperlocal journalism also shows its receipts. They say where they got their information. It's in black and white. And again, nothing is black and white, it's all in the gray area, but you can see for yourself because they show receipts. And I also think one thing that's really important that hyperlocal journalism does, whether it's a Black Club Chicago, whether it's WBEZ, whether it's a WVON, is they're bridge builders. And I think, while we have this discussion, we've got 3 victories of what I hope the future paradigm of journalism looks like.
Yeah. Stephanie?
Brad, you're being very modest there. I'll just say this, of the TV stations, the one that we at the Black Club are always like, how did they get that story? We really have that story. It's always CBS. The CBS reporters really do have their feet on the ground. I'll say for us, just living in Chicago, I've been here for about 20 years now. I think Chicagoans really want news that is responsive to their needs and is accountable to them. And I really do think when you, let's say Molly DeVore, who serves the far northwest side for us, when Molly's in drinking coffee at the same coffee shop and you see her in the morning and then you see her later at your local school council meeting, maybe you see her in the middle of the day at a ribbon cutting. When you see Molly all the time, when you're able to, pitch stories to her and tell her about what kind of news you really want, the kind of stories that matter to you. And when you see her so often that you're able to hold her accountable, hey Molly, I really think you missed X thing in the story, or have you looked into this angle? When you're just really close and get to know those reporters over time, it builds trust. It's like anything else. If you don't know me, how could you trust me? So I really think that, again, we've doubled down on those human connections that are really going to be key to rebuilding trust in news overall. But yes, Tracy, you're right. I really do think it starts with like these local reporters on the ground doing the hard work to build trust with neighbors.
Yeah, and to build off that, you know, VON, it's the hosts, you know? Talk about how you've really built trust in the community.
So, you know, we are the essential storyteller. I tell people that local, hey Sylvia, local media are the essential storytellers. I think about my team right now, and I've often told people, the young folks that do the news at VON, because news gathering is different. When we were there, you were ripping and reading, you had to call people, you had a Rolodex. None of that exists anymore. And because everything is rapid, they don't feel the need to know who the bridge builders were. I had something happen. Reverend Jackson's 85th birthday was in October. Reverend Jesse Jackson from Chicago, right? Most of y'all in the room know Reverend Jackson. But to my point, I'm listening and they're not announcing this on WVON. You know, you can't live in a world where that exists. And so the connection between history and new becomes very important because it speaks to your credibility. It says who you are. Brad, when you talked about Walter Jacobson and those guys, CBS is who they are today because of them. Floyd Calbers and many other folks who just were the bridge to news, right? They would be in a time cap award now to see how news is created and how it's followed. But those folks that have the staying power that's been around long. So when people really want to know what's going on in the Black community of Chicago, what are Black folks thinking? They're going to turn on WVON because they know they're going to get that authentic, organic voice where people who live in Chicago, it's their safe space. And sometimes I'm embarrassed by what some people may hear on there because it's a talk station, right? But it's organic. It's representative of what the citizens of Chicago are thinking. And when Tracy talks about the governor and the mayor, right? We challenge them too, right? We can support them, we can challenge them. You're going to hear that organic, not an algorithm, not telling you where somebody...
It's not you.
Oh,
It's the mic.
not telling you where somebody should be thinking, but really what people are thinking. That's what makes local special. I'll tell you something else. Chicago's a little different from most cities. It just is. You can go in some of these cities and just by the sheer makeup of how we are, South Side, West Side, North Side, no East Side. People try to give us East Side. We don't have an East Side. But think about that. 77 neighborhoods, all with their own DNA. And we own that, right? And we share that, and we're not afraid of that. So it's a big story to tell. And I really commend the work that you are doing. And when we started our second station, my goal was to give the Spanish community, who was grown by leap and bounds in Chicago, that same voice, that drive. You know, there's a reason why you've had now 4, I think, African-American mayors in the city of Chicago, first female Black senator, and a president of the United States. Now, I can't take claim for all that, but I tell you what, I was in the mix, right? Because you're driving. People are trusting your voice. They're listening. You're leaders. It's why Fox News is as big as it is. The media, when people take out the media, right? That's why they attack the media first. Because you can't control people's, the media controls how a city moves, the way it's thinking, what people think in this city. So we don't take that for granted, and you only get that kind of DNA from trusted voices, from legacy institutions that's been around a long time. One last thing, Brad, I talked about our digital streaming platform. We got a new video that I just got from CBS. 1962, Mary Nook. How many of you all know the community of Mary Nook? Okay? Mary Nook opened on the south side of Chicago, brand new neighborhood. Within 2 years, it was an all-white community. Within 2 years, everybody had moved out because the black belt had broken and black folks were moving in. So when they talk about the tale of two cities, you know, this is our history. If you go on there tonight, you'll see that story. Powerful story. It's only 42 minutes long, but it tells why Chicago is the way that Chicago is. Southwest side, north side, in a very vivid and honest way. No judgment, just who we are.
Thank you, thank you. What you were alluding to in terms of all the different ways people get information, we're doing a summit with influencers on Friday to talk about how they want to work with traditional media, because we need to accept change. We are. There are other influencers. I'm sure there's 80-year-old influencers. I know these 4 gay guys that are like in their 80s that have this hot TikTok. So there are others doing media, right? And so in many ways, this generation gets more media thrown at them than any other generation in the history of the world, right? So we say people tune it out, but they're seeing it in all different places. TikTokers who redo stories of traditional media, et cetera. How do you think of maintaining credibility and keeping up with that at the same time, right? There are different standards. There are some that do it very fact-based. They are journalists. Some of them are former journalists now doing new careers on social. But how is it for what you do right now? You think about those influencers and creators and how you might work with them and how you still maintain the credibility of your own work. And we'll start with Stephanie this time. Go the other way.
Tracy, that's a great question. And I'm so glad that we're bringing together those influencers and news media professionals that let each other work. Because the news is changing really fast, and you're right, so much is being thrown at us. I recently had the opportunity, I was down for investigative Congress in Austin, Texas, and Karl Rove was a panelist. Okay. And Karl Rove was saying, lamenting about how this is the golden age of privacy. I'm a little bit younger than Karl Rove, so I was very interested to hear what he thought was the golden age of journalism. And he said, that he believes that this golden age of kind of Walter Cronkite disappeared because people stopped trusting the news. Because of, they believe the news is too partisan now, or maybe not issue related to
Karl Rove?
Yeah. Right, yeah. I'm going somewhere with this anyway. So, being, again, a little bit younger than Karl Rove, I was sitting there thinking, well, one of the things, I really think that what, has kind of changed the news or led to a lack of trust in the news, that really was accelerated by the internet. All of a sudden people had, or the golden age of journalism, as he would say, all of a sudden people had so many voices being thrown at them and so many options of where to get the news, whether that was like Twitter a decade or more ago, to TikTok and Instagram Reels, videos, these sort of vertical video platforms now. There was just a lot of places to get your news, right, or your information, whether it's true or not. And I do think it's really important that we work together with people who can build an audience. I don't really care for influencers or journalists or what they call themselves. Where I think we need to set ourselves apart in these partnerships, so just like set ourselves apart as media, is we need to really make it clear how our processes in reporting differ from an influencer. So one of the ways that we do that at Black Hub, and we've done it since our inception, is on all of our stories, for example, all of our stories have what we call credibility indicators. There are little lines up top that say this story was reported from the ground, It was reported by somebody who's a subject expert in X thing, and it says really quick whether sources was cited or not. So we kind of had that, what we consider credibility indicator right up top, telling our readers something about how that story was reported. I do think it's important for us to educate and continue to educate our audience about how journalism differs from some influencers' processes, and really like why why our values of journalism is so important to us. So I think that's important. I also think it's really important for us all to get on TikTok. When we launched, or just at the beginning of the year, we had 4,000 TikTok followers. Today, that's 150,000 TikTok followers. So that's just a huge growth in audience. A lot of it has been driven by our coverage of That My Streets. And I think that there's just tremendous opportunity for us to get into new audiences, but we have to listen.
Yeah, so we're like, when was America great, right? Don't ask, don't tell. When was news great? Like 10 white guys deciding what everyone was going to hear at night. This is a fascinating question, and I'm not a big government oversight guy, but social media, by and large, has become just a rage machine, and it is calibrated to your own algorithm. So you'll watch it, and you'll get angry, and then you get the next one, you get angrier, and you get angrier, and you get angrier. And the algorithm all changed a few years ago when there was no onus put on those companies to fact check anything. So as long as, and it's a huge, it's got to be legislative. There has to be, it's got to be, when you're talking Meta, TikTok, X, there has to be some accountability. Even if someone puts something on and there's a disclaimer, this isn't verified. There needs to be some type of accountability and apparatus in place to make sure that the truth is no longer skewered. And I don't know what exactly that looks like, and I know the oligarchs that are responsible for these behemoths don't want that, because angry people hate watching, consistently digging themselves into holes. I mean, it's created an epidemic of young male loneliness. So just watch it, it's angry. Until we fix that problem, I think we could just, we can talk ourselves in circles for days.
Yeah, I agree. I do want to add something, though. I have come to have a great appreciation for content creators. And I actually am excited about the opportunity to collaborate with them, to learn from them, but to also hold them accountable. I have a daughter who is 27, and for 30 years, more than 30 years actually, since I have been in this business, a newspaper or two have been on my front door every single day. So her entire childhood, she was exposed to newspapers. When I moved here and transitioned to public radio, when she lived with me during the pandemic after she graduated from Howard University, the 91.5 was on all day long, to the point that she would say, "Do you have to keep that on all day long?" But here's the thing. She does not, when she gets her news, when I call and I ask her now, she lives in Atlanta, and we talk about the news, she is as informed as I am on a lot of issues, maybe not as deep, but she knows what is happening in the world. And she doesn't get it from a newspaper, and she doesn't get it from listening to the radio. She gets it from influencers. She gets it from content creators. Now, early on during that process, when she would share stuff with me, and I would like, well, have you have you fact checked that? Or I would call her out on stuff that she would share that's not real news. And so she has become educated in terms of how to search and who to trust. And so I do think we have a role in news media in helping people to understand that. But the reality is young people are not coming to some of these legacy publications. They're not turning on the dial to listen to us, rather, And so how can we partner in different ways with them? How can we teach them responsible, accountable journalism and tactics and things like that? And so we did, like Lynn Sweet, who has been with the Sun-Times forever, now has a TikTok channel. And so, it is us learning how to adapt in those ways, and collaboration, I think, is key.
I think Tracy is 110% correct. I embrace them. First of all, they keep you young. I mean, what else? I mean, they know what's going on, right? But watch this, it's reverse internships. We don't know, right? We've been around long enough. We've been doing the things the same way. Young people get it. They come in, they're on top of technology. I wouldn't know a TikTok from a top tick if it was not, I don't know how to work them. I participate in them because of the younger staff members. Staff now is made up of 1/3 of people under 30 years old, intentionally. Now, my products are not, they're older, right? And they're for older people. And I'm not going to sit in this room and tell you, well, I got 18-year-olds listening to me. Nor do I want a bunch of 18-year-olds listening to me. But the magic is that if you take young people and what they know about technology and all these different crafts, like the folks that you have on your team, and you mix them with older folks who have the credibility, that have the historical data. I was talking to my dear neighbor Renetta here, who is sitting right in the front row. And Renetta ran one of the largest global advertising companies in the world for many, many years, right? And I just asked her tonight, I said, Renetta, what are you doing now? She said, I'm consulting. I said, you consulting? She said, yeah, I'm back there, I'm consulting. I said, well, of course, they couldn't let you go. Because think about it, in these advertising companies now are a bunch of 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, right? They don't want to, but they are your creators. They are your influencers. But who did they go get to come back and say, okay, now this is how you really do it. The beauty is that we don't have to have a world that separates us. It works well together when it's the right balance.
Now, speaking of that, this is the executive club. So let's talk about how corporate world in Chicago can be part of the solution. And I'm going to start with you, Tracy, about some of the ideas that have been floating around about how to work together with this.
Right. I have spent, and Tracy and I are working on this project together, but I have spent more time probably in the last 3 months or so in really talking to leaders in corporate America, or specifically in Chicago, who are corporate executives and leaders, and really of thinking of helping us to think about ways that we can create paths to sustainability, advising us on a lot of different issues. And so I do think we have to have a closer collaborative relationship. What I can learn from them, what they can learn from us, I think is key. So.
Yeah, first and foremost, I would say, do you subscribe to a local newspaper? Do you support the organizations that are up here? To start, just on a micro level, do you tell other people about the brands that you support, the organizations that you support? And then certainly there are so many advertising and sponsorship opportunities that I'm sure we would all love to tell you about to reach really large audiences. Blog Club is read by more than 1.5 million people every month, so it's a great opportunity to reach people. If you're looking to reach people in certain neighborhoods, it's a really great opportunity because we have hyper-local neighborhood newsletters that reach thousands of neighbors targeted to certain neighborhoods. So there's a lot of great, I think, new opportunities really to reach Chicagoans across our platforms.
One thing I did want to mention too, just as an opportunity, and maybe the different news outlets have this, but WBEZ, or Chicago Public Media, should I say, has what they call a business leadership council. We have people who don't necessarily have to be members or donors of Chicago Public Media, but they're executives at their company, and they are part of our council. And they advise us on stuff. We have, bring panels before them about news stuff, news coverage, innovative ideas, and they give us real-time feedback on how those things are landing with them as executives, but also as citizens of Chicago. And so I think that is a unique opportunity as well.
Can you ask me that question again?
So the role that corporations can play in the ecosystem with media.
For community-centric media, they play major a role in it. One of the things that I think I have learned is that you can always tell progressive corporations by if their message lands at companies like ours, right? Because you see all of these big brands, and I can count how many I cannot get. They just don't see us. They think we're inefficient. We don't have the bandwidth to participate on a national level. But if you think about what's happening now, you see all of these big companies, Tracy, are hurting. So these advertising agencies that used to spend that way, they're not investing in these traditional medias at the level they were. Doing a lot of digital now takes 50 to 60% of a budget. Yeah. So when you want to know where young folks are and TikTok, and it's a lot of the budgets are going away from the traditional media. What I love about Chicago though is because we are so local and respected, you do have companies who will come in and want to reach community-centric media. And that's where you got to lean. Your banks, a lot of your telecommunications companies is what makes us strong. A lot of the nonprofits and the organizations who want to reach content, I don't go and sell advertising. I'm selling content. That's what we are doing as community-centric, independent media. So we have to have a different language when we talk to these advertisers. We have a different expectation that we're not delivering necessarily value, right? It's the qualitative value that we have, an ability to touch a community in a more intimate way than your larger stations.
Excellent. So we have about 10 minutes left, so I have 3 audience questions that we'll do real quick answers. Whoever wants to jump in, and then we'll have one final question about News 2030, where we're going to be at a few years. I wanted to say briefly that Press Forward Chicago, our role is to try and strengthen the ecosystem, so some of that is direct grants, but we're also doing a lot of shared services, audience growth, grant writing, this influencer summit. So we're going to be experimenting in a lot of different ways, and you have a flyer in your chairs. You can subscribe to our newsletter to find out things that are happening. There's also a conference that Public Narrative is hosting on December 3rd in Hyde Park. Sylvia Ewing here can tell you more, but it's going to be a way for journalists as well as community members to interact. So here's the lightning round of audience questions. How was it that legacy media was so easily made to become a bad word? And how do we ensure that we still uphold integrity in light of this? So just a quick downline here, if you want to answer.
Well, I think the world turns. Everything has a cycle. How did newspapers become the bad guy to digital? So now it's our turn. And I just think we have to stop trying to defend the fact that we do need to move. That's what we're talking about. So I just think, the world turns and you have to have a bad guy. But the important things for those of us who are running these things is to maintain our relevance and to adapt new nuances to stay relevant.
Well, that's a great question again. I think that that legacy media, certainly newspapers that have existed for 200 or 300 years, have made a number of mistakes when it came to serving their audiences, whether that's how they served Black and brown neighborhoods in Chicago and beyond, whether that's how they described gay people, whether that's how they, served or didn't serve many communities. So I do think we need to acknowledge that. That is what makes me really hopeful about a lot of the nonprofits and new newsrooms that we see popping up today that really are doubling down on serving unique communities in Chicago, or all communities. And I'll just say to sum it up that, legacy media did make mistakes, and here's the problem: I don't think that they ever fully owned those mistakes.
I'm politically completely middle of the road, but I'm going to kind of go with a hardcore answer here. I think it's because the conservative side of the political spectrum wins the word game. They call global warming climate change. They call what is a medically necessary procedure late-term or partial birth abortion. That's just not even possible, but they've coined that. And then it was coined and somehow made into a bad word, mainstream media. Mainstream media became pejorative. It became a bad word. When if you really think about it, who's mainstream media now? It's Fox News. Nobody watches more of any channel than Fox News and OANN and other outlets like that, and social media. So I think part of it is that word game, and it's stuck, and now mainstream, that's become a bad word.
And the thing I'll add is I do believe that as the country became more polarized, and then more people, and social media exploited that polarization, as did some of our leaders. And I think that we did not do, and when I say we, meaning the media, did not do a good job of telling our story to combat it.
Yeah.
And we just kind of let it happen, and now we're here.
So real quick, down the line, starting with Tracy, how do you feel about AI and content creation?
I think I think it offers an opportunity, but I think that it also offers challenges. We had our own big, with the Sun-Times, embarrassment with AI content that was created by a third source, but landed in the Chicago Sun-Times nonetheless. I do think it offers opportunity, though. I think we need to learn about it as much as we can, put guidelines and standards around it, but certainly figure out ways to use it for good.
I think AI scares the hell out of me. Amazon laid off 14,000 workers this week. They said it wasn't just because of AI, but I know one of those workers, and that person was a 40-year-old middle manager making $400,000 or $500,000 a year. You will never get a job like that again. AI is completely changed the game, but like my cohort here said, we have to embrace it. We have to know it. It's just like social media influencers. We have to bring them in, bring everyone in under the tent, and then create guardrails. But we need politicians and policymakers to be bold enough to stick up to the oligarchs, the scented trillionaires, to stick up to them and say, you know what, we're going to have to make a couple rules. So.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of discussions right now about how we use AI in journalism, or to what degree we're going to see it upend our industry or not. That's really up to us. I want to remind all of us up here. I don't see nearly enough energy being spent talking about how we as journalists should be using more of our bandwidth to investigate AI. Not only AI, but data centers. I'm very concerned about data centers popping up. There's a new book out called The Empire of AI by a journalist who specializes in this. I just had the opportunity to see her speak, and I am horrified by some of the things that she brought to light just about data centers alone. So I do think that Yeah, well, we really have our hands full to, these days with the changes in immigration and so many other things that we have happening on the ground. I would like to see more of our journalistic power being used to investigate AI.
Quick question. When you say data centers, you're talking like environmental impact?
And more.
And more,
You
yeah.
would be horrified, right?
Yeah. No, I've already said I'm scared.
Yes.
To Brad's point, I think that AI is dangerous because it does cut down on people and being employed. I mean, we are Americans, we gotta work, right? And as a business owner, I know that it can save money, right? And so the balance of that, right, becomes important, and people have to know it. But I'm going to caution again, we have to get away from making all of these new nuances the boogeyman. We just do. We have to learn how to embrace them. They're not going away. As a matter of fact, they're becoming more perfected. And what I try to tell young people is, talent, a lot of the mediocrity in this new world order that we're moving to will not be allowed. Those of us who are the survival of the fittest, who are really excelling, will be the human capital that will be in place, because it won't be a need for anything else. And that's the unfortunate part about it. But we got to figure out a way to embrace it, because it's here, Tracy, and it's major, and it's not going away.
Yeah.
Real quick, Tracy, I'll add, we need to figure out how to get AI to pay us for our content.
Right. One of my books was used in the large language model. I just got a letter from my publisher yesterday that they're suing to have a portion of it, and I'm sure I'll get like $20 or something.
But to your point, here's the thing. When YouTube was coming up, I've never figured out how these people can take people's content and put it on their site and they not be sued for it. So we've kind of let this thing has jumped out and nobody said anything. As a matter of fact, people are like, well, how do I get my stuff on YouTube? You can't have it both ways, right? And they don't pay people. That is an amazing business model for me.
Mm-hmm. Talk about data centers.
Yeah.
Real quick, we have real quick lightning on this for what you see as the ideal newsroom of 2030. Probably AI was in there, the mix. We'll start with Tracy and come down real quick.
It is.
2030, man, that's, I can hardly think about the newsroom of 2020. Well, 2030 is not that far. It's actually, gosh, 5 years from now. My goodness. I don't know. I think I see actually a newsroom in 2030 just being a lot more collaborative, and particularly here in Chicago. The one thing that I have continued to be impressed in the 7 years that I have been here is the collaborative nature of news outlets in Chicago. You don't see that in a lot of cities, and I think that actually could be a model for sustainability for our future.
I think it comes in the form of trust, and that's kind of double entendre, and I'm not dogging Amazon, but for some reason it keeps on coming up. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, and everyone thought, oh, that's great, he's going to do some great stuff, it's going to be an independent voice. I've never seen the Washington Post do an anti-Amazon story. So I think it's going to take civic leaders and people with deep pockets to pool money together to create a hands-off trust that then endows journalism and allows journalists to do their jobs unencumbered of the political whimsy of those that have endowed the trust.
I think in 5 years, as we see sadly news deserts continue to grow and other communities, really most of the country, where journalism is not being fortified, I kind of see the opposite vision here in Chicago. I think journalism will be thriving. I think it'll be very collaborative. And I think we'll see journalism that continues to really innovate to meet the moment for our readers. I already see that a lot now. I think it's going to be like just supercharged in 5 years. And that's because of how much Chicago has invested in its news ecosystem. You know, we talk about this all the time, but what is happening here in Chicago really is a model for the nation. And it's because so many people have gotten together to really meaningfully support newsrooms with Press Forward Chicago and other efforts like that.
I think so too. I think the big guys will continue to get smaller, and the smaller people will continue to tell our story and be considered in a different way as a serious choice. And I just think hyperlocalism is it, especially in a place like Chicago. So I think we're headed there.
So follow these folks on social, subscribe to their newsletters, share their stories and not stories that are unverified. I do believe that we're raising a generation of appropriately cynical people that are curating their own experiences, and we just got to get our stuff out there more and figure out where they're at, because we've got great journalism going on. So speaking of great journalism, it's my pleasure to introduce the Dean of the School of Communications at Loyola University of Chicago, Jeannie McNerney.
I think each of you walked into this room knowing that the work of sustaining journalism is really hard. But you also just heard Tracy ask an important question: where will we be in 2030? And I think this panel shows you where we're going to be in 2030. It is collaboration. It is questioning. It is innovating. And it is recognizing that in working together, we will elevate local journalism, which will help us build back trust that was taken from us and given away by us. It is our job to do this. As a dean, I am thrilled to see students in the room, because many of you are leaders, some of you are readers, but these are the ones who are going to be taking us to the next step. They're the ones who are being trained by the people sitting up here and give me enormous hope for what comes next. In this moment, I also really want to thank Press Forward and the Executive Club for continuing to host conversations like this that help us together think about what's next, and us together think about how we can be part of the solution that we know our democracy depends upon. It is people asking questions and people willing to give answers when they're really hard. So please join me in thanking Press Forward and the Executive Club. Now please join me in thanking our fabulous panelists. On behalf of the Executive Club, I also want to thank you. Thank you for taking your time on a gorgeous evening. Thank you for coming and listening, participating, and asking questions, and literally showing up to show how very important this is. This conversation isn't over. There is a reception after this, so pick up something to drink, pick up something to eat, and continue to talk about how we come together to make a difference. Thank you very much for coming.